Alright, YouTube, a lot of people think that nationalists, they're like, well, pro-white and everybody else fuck themselves. You know, like, oh, Africa for the whites too, we're neo-colonialists now. That's not really the way that it is, but that's the way that it gets cast off, partially because of the Al Sharptons of the white race that I've already talked about before. But there is one caveat to this. I appreciate foreign cultures. Like I've said, if I go to India, I'm not eating at McDonald's. I'm going to eat like actual Indian food. If I go to like fucking Ghana or something, I want to try their food. I'm not interested in going to Burger King or something like that. It's like immersing yourself in a foreign culture. That's a good thing to do, as long as you're not trying to like usurp their culture, take it over, and destroy it or something like the Chinese do in East Africa, like the Europeans tried to do in like West Africa, like some people want to do in Europe now in the United States. That doesn't work. Like, multiculturalism's completely fucking failed. Everyone knows it. Even third worlders at this point realize it's giving them brain drain. But we also need to be honest with ourselves as Westerners about the shortcomings of foreign climes. For instance, I think India has a great culture. Indus Valley civilization up on through the modern day. A lot of very colorful things, a lot of cool music, and interesting foods. But they also have a rape epidemic, to the point at which it resembles South Africa, to the point at which I have to wonder whether some of these people aren't being taught at a very young age that women are literally nothing more than property, in the same sense that I would usually ascribe to like maybe Saudi Arabia or something. Or we look at like Turkey. Now, Turkish delights and like Ottoman furniture and stuff like that, yeah, it's very interesting. There are a lot of cool things to see in Turkey. But they've also got a dictator right now who is slowly degrading the reforms that their country built for almost a century back into the dustbin of history in order to declare himself the sultan of some sort of modern caliph state. Or we don't have to look just at the undeveloped world or the developing world. We can look even at like the most prosperous nations. We look at a place like Belgium or a place like Germany, and we say, yeah, there's a lot of cultural history there, but at the same time it's slowly being erased now because they're on the other side of this dynamic between the donor culture and the receiving culture, and they're getting completely swamped, and they're getting ground down. Their economies and their cultures can't really deal with this crap. So we've got to be honest with ourselves about not only the shortcomings of other nations, but also our own nations. United States, my own nation, great example, probably the best of examples. We've been led by morons for several decades now. We've engaged in numerous wars that haven't benefited anybody in the world. Our government is retarded and has actually caused the rise of terrorism all over the Middle East, in Libya, in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and so forth, South Asia, and other parts of the world. And that was largely our own government's fault. So while you can support your nation, you can say our fundamental basic principles are good, we believe in our language, our culture, our heritage, we can be nationalistic about our nation. At the same time, we do have to criticize what's clearly not working. What I see, though, is a dynamic in which people in the more developed world, they're kind of used to criticizing their regimes. Like Europeans, they like to complain about their governments, especially in the UK. They're like, oh, they're just a bunch of wankers, stuff like that. And here, people, they criticize their government, although they kind of fall into partisan camps, so like a third of the population doesn't criticize the person in power no matter what they do. Like Obama could wipe his ass with a puppy, and a lot of the Democrats would assume that it was some sort of like modern art gesture, and Trump could literally shoot somebody in Central Square, and there would be people who wouldn't have a problem with that. It sort of just falls into the partisan divide. But we're more used to criticizing our government, so you got to realize, in some of the undeveloped parts of the world, criticizing your government can get you hanged from a tree. So we've got to realize that there's a little bit of a different cultural dynamic there. And by the way, I will say this, and I've said it before, and I think people ignored this. I'm fully aware of the fact that there are foreign cultures incapable of assimilating into Western cultures. The fact that I'm a civic nationalist doesn't mean I'm ignoring this fact. I don't believe that people who are religiously Islamic have the capability to fully merge with the secular U.S. culture, which was largely built by a bunch of deist Christians. No, I don't think that they can. I think people from completely unindustrialized parts of the world, some fucking tribalistic group, no, they're not going to be able to comprehend because they've never encountered it. They can't even comprehend the concept of urbanization. What we see as our civilization is a totally foreign concept. Anymore, like you get someone from the inner city, you tell them, oh, well, it's time to go camping. And they can't erect a tent, they can't start a fire, they don't know how to fish, they can't grow anything. They don't even know how to walk half a mile through the woods without like whining about the fact that their legs are going to fall off or something. And it's just a complete culture shock. Now, it'd take them a very long time to get used to that. They probably wouldn't enjoy it, and they probably, 9 times out of 10, they won't be inclined to even bother trying. So it's the same way in reverse. You take people from out in the jungle somewhere, and you put them in New York City, yeah, they're going to be fucking miserable. I'm fully aware of this fact. There are people with value systems. They've been raised up from childbirth in those systems that cannot assimilate into the glory of the United States. Yeah, that's true. I support the concept of banning immigration from places that have been destabilized, by the way, or places that were never stable to begin with, fucking Rwanda or something like that. No, I don't want them to come here. Because the few people that are intelligent enough there to be able to, in the academic sense, to assimilate into our culture and add anything to it, their country needs them anyway. They need them a hell of a lot more desperately than we do. Otherwise, you give them brain drain. I've spoken about that as well. But we need to be honest about the shortcomings of foreign nations. Now, the fucking social justice warriors, they say, well, foreign cultures are all great and they can do no wrong. Our culture is the one that's wicked and despicable and fallen, and we need more diversity. I don't agree with at all. I think you look at some of the problems in these other countries, they're way worse than what we go through on a day-to-day basis. You look at the poverty in like Bangladesh, or trash all around parts of urban China. That's way worse than anything we're used to dealing with. We couldn't even survive under such conditions. I don't think the average American, even from the lower class, could survive under such conditions. We have to be honest about the fact that that actually is there. It's like like third wave feminists. They're not willing to go to Saudi Arabia to push for women's rights. They're not going to Pakistan to talk about lesbian marriage. No, they sit here in the comfort of their little waspish office with their trust fund funding their Tumblr page, and they ramble about the patriarchy in the United States or the UK or something like that, and how evil and wicked white men are, or something like that. They completely ignore these other issues. It's like Gamergate or any of this other crap. They talk about, oh, dongles are sexist, but at the same time, oh, stoning women for being witches or adultery or being raped in Arabia. Oh, who cares about that? That's not a real issue. You're just trying to deflect off of your inherent racism, sexism, and homophobia as Western men or something like that. And it's just crazy. It's crazy to watch them tie themselves in knots, trying to explain how their worldview makes any sense. The far left, like the pro-multiculturalism, we need more diversity because apparently having a bunch of Irish and Italian and Polish and stuff people in an area isn't diverse enough. No, they have to be specifically like of, I don't know, Ethiopian origin or something like that. I just don't get it. Like, even their racial scheme doesn't make any sense. These people, they ignore all the problems in every other part of the world other than in the West. Meanwhile, some of the traditionalists, they actually make the opposite mistake. They lionize or elevate Western culture, pretend there are no problems that aren't caused by outsiders. Like the government, they're blameless, usually, unless they're like absolute socialists or something. Like if it's a centrist regime, they say, well, we don't even want to talk about that. We just want to talk about this refugee group that moved in and now there was a stabbing or something. And they pretend that that's not just a symptom of a larger problem. And it is. It's a symptom of globalism. Which affects, by the way, they're never going to get ahead in their arguments unless they start pointing out the obvious mirror image of what they themselves are suffering under, which is, yeah, our culture's being slowly displaced. You've also got to look at what happens to the donor culture, which is they get brain drain. They're most skilled and intelligent individuals that, yeah, by your standards might still be near the bottom of the heap, but they've actually got an education or training or something in their home nation. They've left their home nation in shambles. You get thousands of people. You get the top 1,000 or 2 people who graduate from some university in some Africa. They graduate in Nigeria or Vietnam or something. They all end up going to the United States or the UK or Germany or France or something to study further, and they immigrate there, and then they do very well, and they're willing to work long hours. They're very smart usually, but at the same time they've abandoned their home culture and left it in the dust. There's a reason why they're not developing quickly. And so the nationalistic argument, oddly enough, and this is for the social justice warriors to hear, if you wish for people in the third world to suffer less, to have fewer famines, have better infrastructure, and have more dignified lives, the best way to accomplish that is by not giving them brain drain, by constantly taking hordes of refugees and asylum seekers in the Western world. This is an active debate within anthropology and has for several decades. It's not a new argument. It's been going on for some time. It predates the very existence of the concept of an alt-right. It predates it completely. It predates social justice warriors in the modern sense. It goes back before that sort of crap even existed. And so I don't think there's really much debate anymore, because we can observe the effects of this sort of policy, and it just doesn't work for anybody. We need to be honest with ourselves, say, yes, there are problems in our own nations, there are also problems in foreign countries. Largely, a lot of this could be solved, all the social alienation and brain drain especially, could be solved by choosing not to indulge in the current practice of immigration as we have it. Now, I don't have a problem with immigration. I think, though, and some people may say, oh, you're a bigot for thinking this. I think we should favor immigrants from cultures that are more similar to ours. I think it's fairly straightforward. Somebody's going to immigrate from England. They speak English, you know, with an accent, you know, God save the Queen accent, but yeah, they speak English. They probably have a similar general religious background to the native population. They're used to that kind of developed culture, fully industrialized and so forth. They're from a nation that's, you know, gotten along with us for a couple of centuries. Yes, I would give them preference over somebody who wants to immigrate from elsewhere. I don't care about the economic side of it, of, oh, well, they'll expect socialism and you know, they'll end up taking like government programs or something. Well, just eliminate some of those programs, then it's problem solved, I guess. Then people who want to leave their strangulated European economy will come here and work, and they don't have to worry about brain drain. They've actually got the opposite problem, where people have all these degrees and they've been rendered largely useless because there aren't enough higher, like, skilled, higher paying jobs for everyone. Australia's got this problem. The UK has this problem. Germany sure as hell has this problem. Like, everyone there talks like a fucking PhD, but at the same time, how many jobs can you actually give to that sort of scientific elite? There aren't so many. You've still got to have people to work the factory floor, and they have like forklift simulators and stuff. It's like, it's very Asperger's to me, it appears to be, as a culture, when it comes to like the weird fusion between work and play. It's almost like they're the same thing in some cases over there. It's very mysterious to me. I just don't quite understand it. But yeah, a little bit about the interplay between the West versus the East, the developed versus developing and undeveloped world, and industry versus non-industrialized nations, and culture in general. We've got to get real about these things. We can't keep deluding ourselves and think, oh, well, every foreigner that comes here is automatically a blameless angel, that there couldn't be any clash between their culture and ours. It just could never happen. Yes, there are clashes, quite often. Some of them can be overcome, and it's perfectly okay. But at other times, people come here, they never assimilate, and then you get like San Bernardino or something like that. It's like, why should we have to deal with that just because our government wants to cry crocodile tears, pretend they care about some group of refugees? I don't see Obama or Biden taking them in. Now, I see them putting them in little ghettos in urban areas. They send them to Detroit or something like that in the vain hopes of propping up an economy. And that's just not the way that things work. That's about all. Peace out.